Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Carter. I'm the Executive Director at the Livermore Valley Performing Arts Center. Welcome to Beyond the Stage. We're here at the Advanced Creative Studios in Livermore. Thank you to Advanced Creative for hosting us. And I'm here with David Victor, legendary rock and roll icon in the East Bay here.
Oh, I love that legendary status. When
know.
did I achieve that?
Well, you're a legend in my mind.
Okay, well, that's enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as the host thinks you're legendary.
Right here, you're a legend. And David, I've known you for a couple of years now, and you've performed at the Bankhead Theater on that very stage.
Beautiful stage.
And you have a pretty cool story to tell. And I want to, and this is fun for me too, because I grew up kind of like, I was a rock and roll kid growing up, you know, and one of the first records I ever bought was Quiet Riot.
Oh, yeah.
And I was listening, when I was driving here, I was listening to a band called Velocity that you might be familiar with. And it kind of reminded me of the Quiet Riot that I listened to when I was a kid.
Yep. It's very 80s, late 80s, we'll say, sound.
Yeah. So I looked up your bio, so I kind of did some research.
Oh, wow. You did your prep. I love that.
I did. And I'm just going to read, I'm not going to read much today, but I'm going to read one line from your bio that I thought was kind of encapsulated a lot of things. And you did it. Whoever wrote it did a great job. And it says, David truly lived out a rock star movie dream, being plucked from a cover band into the namesake band whose music he was performing as the cover artist, the multi-platinum band Boston, with whom he appeared on 2 North American tours and had a number 1 classic rock hit in 2014 with the song Heaven on Earth, which I also listened to this morning. Which is a killer song.
Excellent. Thank you.
And why don't we start kind of, what I like to ask people, first of all, is kind of what were your roots, and kind of how did you come into music and the music industry, and you're a guitarist. And, you know, so where did it all start for you?
Where did it all start? Well, let's see. I grew up in Walnut Creek, and really I kind of have a memory, a pretty strong memory of I have 2 older sisters, and my middle sister was kind of the rocker, and she got us into kind of our own music. Like my parents loved the Beatles and the Doors and the Rolling Stones, and so I kind of consider that, you know, my parents' music. And then what's our thing, right? So my middle sister got, I believe the first album she ever bought that was sort of Mrs. R music was the Boston album. And so, and kind of simultaneous to that, she had a boyfriend who had just started taking guitar lessons. In my mind, it was 2 weeks, but actually after having played this riff a few times, I think probably it was a few more weeks than that. But the intro to More Than a Feeling, we're sitting out there one evening on our front lawn, and he starts to play that. I'm like, oh my God, how long have you been playing? Thinking, oh, you know, this is some impossible dream. And he goes, 2 weeks. And I thought, that's the art for me. If that's all it takes, just a couple of weeks, I could probably manage that. Although 2 weeks to a youngster, that's an eternity. So I started taking guitar lessons. I kind of always wanted an art, you know. My mother is a painter. My father was a great cartoonist, and my 2 older sisters also painters. And I was terrible at it. I had no affinity for it, but I had artistic aspirations, I guess you say. And I always loved music. Growing up out here, it was all KFRC and KYA. And then when FM radio kind of hit its stride, I started listening to KMEL and stuff like that, and KSJO. So all kind of early rock and roll. And Boston was like, you know, that was, when you heard that on the stereo on FM, it just sounded unbelievable. It still sounds great to this day, but that's kind of the genesis of all these rumblings, as they say, of rock and roll.
So I guess you could say you always kind of grew up around rock and roll, and that was your early influences in music was
kind good.
Of rock music.
Yeah, we're you know, like the Beatles and you know, all that stuff that you just needed in your DNA to sort of process what is good and what is not good. You know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you talked about like how he learned that riff in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you know, I play guitar a little bit. I'm not like you, but I started in high school, and I think that was one of the first pieces of music I learned too.
Great riff.
And I do, there is something about the guitar where part of me thinks guitarists have a bad rap for being a little bit lazy, but it is an instrument where you can just pick it up and within a few hours you could be playing a song all by yourself.
Something, yeah. In fact, I had a thing called Strum and Spirits where we would go into like corporate, events and things like that. I'd bring in, at the time I had about 45 guitars, bring them all in, sit them all down, basically, and just kind of give them a little presentation of like, okay, here's how to play guitar. And so the conceit was, okay, this, divide it up, like get a 3-chord song. This part of the room will play the A, you'll play the D, you'll play the E, and pretty soon we're playing Wild Thing or something like that.
Yeah. That's what makes it such a great instrument.
Yeah.
And then, so you started learning guitar, and then at what point were you playing in bands? Like, how long did that transition
So
take?
I think, I don't know what that author of that, 10,000 hours outlier thing is, but I mean, I put in my 10,000 hours in those first 2 years easily, just staying inside, listening to stuff and just drilling, wood shedding. And I probably got as good as I ever have been within that first 2 years and started playing in bands, as soon as I could. In fact, a buddy of mine just yesterday sent me a little flyer. I played the senior show in my high school, so I guess I would have been 17, and we played Eruption. I played Eruption, and we played You Really Got Me. That was our senior show thing, and so that you have to be okay to do that.
Well, so yeah, definitely do Eruption. But the first time I performed was also in high school, and this was like MTV Unplugged was really big,
Right.
like in the early 90s, and we did this Unplugged show, and I played with these other guys, and we played the Down on the Corner by Creedence Clearwater Revival. And so that riff was a lot easier for me.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang. And we called ourselves Carter Clearwater Revival. I thought that was...
I like that. Could have been the first tribute band ever.
Yeah, the first Creedence band. I had a lot of fun with that, though. But so you played in high school with some bands.
Yep.
And then did you go straight into performing for a living, or did you do some other things in between?
So it was kind of funny. I mean, the whole Boston story just threads its way through everything. But like one of the early like publicity pieces for Boston was like, hey, this guy worked at Polaroid. He's got a master's degree, and he was a tinkerer, and he likes electronics, and he put all his own stuff together. So it occurred to me that like getting a college degree was probably a good idea because then that would allow me to do the kind of music I wanted to do. And that really is what I did. I didn't quite have the success of the founder of Boston, but I followed that path. So I got a computer science degree from beautiful Cal State East Bay and went out and just got a job and then just kind of started woodshedding on recording music. So that was, you mentioned Velocity. The first album I did was in 91, and it was just a solo album called Proof Through the Night. And I put that out on cassette, if you remember those.
Yeah.
And then in about 96, I think I put out the Velocity album. So that was trying to be more a band. And so I put a couple players together, but actually recording on the album, it was myself, this guy who I think still lives in San Ramon, Chris Dodge, great guitar player, and Pat Torpy, late Pat Torpy on drums, and just put this album out, and that was kind of the first real musical like statement from me. I mean, some of those songs, it's embarrassing to say, I probably worked on them for a decade, and are they amazing? There's some of them are good. I think
I noticed there a couple of songs. Every rock album has to have at least one or two songs that's titled. The title is a gir's name. Is that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Is that just something that?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well,
every rock singer does.
I won't go deep into this story, but it's there's just certain names that work with girls' names. So Janine, you never know what you mean. Okay, cool. That's kind of writes itself. So you got to have, and there was let's say a tag team, Janine and Julia Ann. And so that was, I wrote one for Julia Ann and one for Janine. So there you go. And they're both kind of fun songs. Yeah,
they are. Well, and I guess one thing I like to ask people who write their own music is like, what is their process? So for you, do you like come up with the lyrics first, or do you do the music, or is it all just kind of come out at once? Or
Yeah, great question. I had this weird process where I would, once I was sort of coming into my own as a singer, I would kind of just make noises that I thought sounded like how I wanted the song to sound. I mean, music is like, I always say this, music is like the closest thing we have to magic because it's so hard to define why it hits somebody in a certain way. Like when I was growing up, I just liked just guttural, they call it crotch rock. I just liked how it made me feel. And, a lot of my intelligent friends didn't like that music, but it drew me to it for whatever reason. I liked the visceral energy of it. And so for me, why I was drawn to it, I would hear a sound. I go, oh my God, what is that sound? Like that first Van Halen album is just giant, this amazing sonic quality that it had to it, and just how it made me feel, and the feelings that it inspired. And so I wanted the sounds to be that. So what I would do is kind of make the sounds and the riffs and then go, oh, now what am I going to say? And some of those songs, when I say a decade, one of the songs on that Velocity album, Love is Dangerous, I was like, this song's great. It needs a bridge. And I finally thought of a bridge, and I was like, okay, but what are the lyrics? And I mean, I was driving to Pleasant Hill, and I finally figured it out. I was on the 680. I remember the moment where I was like, okay, those are the words that will actually work, and it's done. Was it a top 10 hit? No. Does everyone love it? No. But to me, I listen to it and I'm satisfied because it all kind of fits together and works. So that's really the process, just the sound and then making it make sense, hopefully, on the other end, lyrically.
Oh, I love that story. And like I try and write music too and songs, and sometimes I'll write something and same thing. It's like it doesn't feel like it's complete,
Right.
and I'll let it sit. And then I've had some things, now I'm getting older now. It's like I'll come back to something I started 10 years ago.
Yeah, and some of it's
And
good,
then-
right? You go,
Oh, yeah.
kind of
And then-
re-inspires you. Like, why didn't I finish this? And-
or you're like a different musician now,
Right.
and I can figure out how to make it work.
Right.
And one thing I discovered too is what I write about now is I would never write about 20 years ago, or vice versa. Like
Right.
when I hear
So
what I
those
wrote 20
lyrics
years
might
ago,
have
yeah.
trouble quite fitting together.
Yeah. So it's like, wow, what kind of person was I back then versus now? So you were playing in this band Velocity,
Yes.
and you were doing some cover work, tribute bands, and
That started later. So I
Okay.
mean, I guess the short stories, we did Velocity. Velocity had a song, actually 3 songs that got played on this rock station that had just started in Salt Lake City. And those 3 songs went to #1 on their playlist. And so we were outselling Metallica at the record stores in Salt Lake City, in the Utah, sort of metro area, or Salt Lake City metro area. And so we were starting to get noticed, and we went out there. We ended up going out there 5 times doing different shows. The first one was a club date, sold out, larger club next time, a little theater the next time. And this was over the course of like 18 months. We just kept going out. And finally we did a show. We opened for Quiet Riot.
there you go.
Yeah. At the Wasatch Event Center. And as we walked on stage, there was people saying, Velocity. I was like, ew, this feels good. Yeah. And it was so organic too, because it was the way you were supposed to do. You're supposed to get your song played and then people to vote that they like it. And then you start getting this momentum. The thing that happened for us is it wasn't Clear Channel. It was a different broadcaster, but they bought the station and they changed the broadcasting to Country and Western or something. It was gone.
Oh,
it just wiped us off the
format changed
right when it was like just trying to build, and then Clear Channel bought everything else. So that ended any other outbreaks. Like we had some airplay on Keishi in St. Louis, which is like the 100,000 watt flamethrower out there, and I actually called a guy in St. Louis because I had somebody sent me an electronic mail, which was new at the time, that said, "Hey, I heard your song playing on the radio." So I called a record store and I said, have anybody asked you about this? He goes, I am holding a copy of your album in my hand, selling it to somebody. I'm like, I don't know how that worked because we hadn't sent any, we didn't have distribution or anything. It was just the weirdest thing. But I thought, this is really starting. And then when the Clear Channel kind of completed their sales and stuff, they were like, if you play Back in Black 20 more times a week, you'll get 0.003% more listenership. So all the advertisers just went, that's what we want.
Yeah. Oh. Well, you can still buy Velocity online, I found.
Yeah.
I saw it on Amazon, and it's on Apple Music. So
That's
if anybody wants to listen
I
to
think
it.
CD Baby is where we have them. They're digital downloads and stuff. So yeah, still available.
Yeah. So tell me, let's fast forward a little bit.
Yes.
Because you did eventually land in the band Boston.
Yes.
And that's an interesting story, I think. So how were you discovered for Boston?
Yeah. So I moved to LA in '99 and played in a couple cover bands, and there's a publication down there, Music Connection, and I saw an ad for a band looking for a singer who could do Boston music, and I was like, oh, I always love Boston, my Boston story. So I tried out, and the band was great, got nice guys, and like, how many dates are we going to play? I'm like, I don't know, 5 or 6 a year or something. And, okay, cool. So we put the band together. We rehearsed. And boy, let me just stop here and say one thing. Wear earplugs, kids. Wear
I was going to ask you how your ears are doing.
Not good.
Okay.
I mean, right now, I'm getting a noise floor of about right now. And that's just from rehearsing with that band, smoking, with no earplugs, just blasting away in like a, corrugated tin warehouse that we were rehearsing in, and not good. Right, as the lead singer, you're usually standing right behind the drummer, and the drummer's on those cymbals. Not good for your hearing. So,
good advice.
But yeah, but we played a few shows, and when the lead singer from Boston passed away, I remember my wife and I were in a Bed Bath & Beyond. I have these weird remembrances of places. And I just felt like a lightning bolt. And I was just like, here I am in this Boston tribute band. And, was I the caliber of that singer? No way. But maybe they were looking for another singer someday. So it was interesting. 2 years passed. And they got another singer in the band. And I thought, okay, cool. We do our thing and they do their thing. And whatever. And, but then 2 years after that, I got a call, and the guy said, hey, how would you like to come out and record, a song on Boston's new album? And I'm like, Mom, no. So of course, it was just a amazing opportunity. And I, actually had a vacation scheduled, ironically out in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, that we were going to in 2 weeks. So they didn't even have to buy a plane ticket. I just, flew out there, and during the course of our little stay out there, went up to the studio and met the founder and did the song that they wanted to sort of audition me for, and that all went okay, I guess, and ended up joining the band.
And you toured a little bit with them too.
Yeah, so I did that recording, and then it was like 2 years later before the band started touring. Of course, I wanted to start touring that day.
Right.
But kind of contemporaneous to that, I put a band together called Bostics, and we did the music of Boston because I thought whenever they call, I want to be in shape, right? Yeah. Because to do these songs in the original keys and everything, and like that amazing vocalist, Brad Delp, may he rest in peace, just an amazing... one of the top 3 greatest rock singers of all time, and never gets mentioned, really. I mean, it's the Usual Suspects and not him, and he should be mentioned, but an amazing singer. So with their current singer, Tommy DiCarlo, I joined the band, and I thought, well, they like my voice, but, they got a lead singer. But I ended up singing Peace of Mind, which is my favorite Boston song of all time, Amanda, which was their #1 single from '86, and the chorus of More Than a Feeling on that first tour I did with them in 2012. So just incredible. I remember sitting in my hotel room at the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida, which has since been remodeled. They have a Les Paul. That's have you seen that hotel? It's a Les Paul
not in
shape.
Hollywood.
And it's standing on its end as the hotel, and it's just a really cool hotel. But it's like a mini arena, and doing my first show there, just looking down at the venue, going, "I'm here." I kind of made it. I guess from where I started in my front lawn in Walnut Creek to debuting with this band in 2012. So at 50 years, I was almost 50 when the show happened. So. Stick to it, kids.
That's great. And the kind of like, there was a thread throughout your life with Boston kind of involved.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you actually got to perform with them.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't
cool.
like I randomly joined, just some band that's why that rock star quote is kind of apropos, because it's like he's in a band that's doing tribute to, basically what seemed like Judas Priest or something. And then the Judas Priest of that movie, Iron Dragon or something they call him. Yeah. And so it was pretty much, other than at the time, I think Arnel Pineda had joined Journey, and that was about it in terms of, singers from bands that did that music joining the band. The actual singer from Boston never played in a band, never went to a karaoke night. He just got up on stage at the tribute to Brad Delp in 2007 or 8 and sang like a bird, and just amazing player, musician, and just an incredible human being.
Wow, that's great. Well, you mentioned your ears. How are your vocal cords?
Vocal cords are fine. In fact, I think I'm singing better now than I have ever sung in my life, which is why it's sort of tragic and ironic that, my ears are sort of given up the ghost. But like, I didn't grow up in a musical family, so it took me a long time to go, okay, that sound that you hear you're processing as maybe like, okay, you're expelling air and your vocal cords are vibrating and it's making a sound, but is it the right sound? And just those half steps. That's the thing, just understanding. And even now when I sing something without any musical cues or whatever, I understand where those notes should be. There's a note in More Than a Feeling where you got to hit a falsetto, and then you got to go a half step up at the very end of the song.
Point, yeah.
And when I first would sing it, even in that Boston tribute band, I'd sing it and then just, it's like, well, it's higher, but it's not the note, you know? So you got to get it to that note. And I started doing a kind of a move on my guitar where I would just, when I was warming up backstage, like bing, bing, that's the note. You got to get to that note. So when you warm it up on that, and there's just a certain amount of horsepower that you need to get to that next step. And, some people just sing like birds out of the womb, and that's not me. It was a long progression of, 50 years,
Well, that's a good lesson in kind of vocal training, is playing the note before you sing.
Note, matching it, hearing those beats,
Exactly.
when you tune a guitar, ding, 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 then you're in tune.
Yep.
If somebody had told me that when I was 16, it would have saved me a lot of embarrassing moments on stage. I'll tell you that.
Well, let's talk about what you're doing now. And one thing that I think is really exciting is that you have this nonprofit organization called Harmony and Healing, still in the music realm.
Right.
And tell me a little bit about what Harmony and Healing is about.
Thanks for asking. So Harmony and Healing was kind of born out of an experience I had while I was in Boston. We did myself and just one of their official photographers went to the Miller Children's Hospital in Long Beach, to the Pediatric Oncology Ward, which is, some of the most poignant, one of the most poignant places you can be. And it was a charity that wanted to do music and food and art, and it was a little bit difficult to organize. And we only ended up doing it twice, but it was just so moving, spiritually moving to me. I just thought, oh, this is how you're supposed to do music. This is why music is so incredible, because the people, these are kids and they didn't really have any affinity to Boston, right? But just singing and making those sounds, they were like drawn to it. And so I I kind of always wanted to do more of that. And in 2019, I finally just said, I just got to put my own thing together and just try to do this in some local, like Bay Area hospitals. And so I put Harmony and Healing together and started going out to different hospitals and saying, hey, can we do this here? And found a few, takers, and Stanford, Lucille Packard Children's Hospital out at Stanford was one of the early adopters, and thanks to them. But going out and just doing acoustic guitar and singing and learning some songs that were a little newer than Boston, and just really seeing how, I had one experience where I was playing for one youngster and just doing a Boston song, and he's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. And then all of a sudden I switched and I was doing a Snow Patrol song, and he recognized it, and you could just see like his eyes got big, like, oh, that's what's going on here. And one of the things that I experienced while I was in Boston and just sort of translated to Harmony and Healing is this experience where you come out, you're in Boston, but nobody knew who I was, and it didn't matter. It says Boston, you're doing the music, it sounds great, you're Boston. That's okay. And they're having this moving experience. And when people would come backstage, they go, man, I saw you in Long Beach in 1976 and you still sound great.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I was at Foothill Junior High in Walnut Creek, but thanks. And they'd go, what, huh? And they'd, sign my album. And I'm like, they didn't care that I wasn't actually an original member. They just were having a moment. So fast forward to Harmony and Healing, and when you give people those moments where you help them to have a memory that's a pleasant memory, you can just see their eyes light up. They just wake up. It goes straight to their soul. It's almost like you think about, walking down the street, you smell a smell and you just have a memory.
Yeah.
Music does that too. It's just that no intellectual, capacity necessary. You're just going right to the, feeling centers of your soul.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about music. And it's a healing thing. In fact, there's music therapists now. That's a real job that musicians can get now. There's a program out at UOP, and you can get a music therapy degree and do music for a living and have make a nice living. I know a lot of musicians that don't, have been really rocked by the, pandemic. And I just like to encourage people to, do things with music that are, career choices that, can allow you to pay your own health insurance.
Right. So where can we find out more about Harmony and Healing?
Yeah. So harmonyandhealing.org is that website, and davidvictor.com is sort of the link tree of, everything. So I've got my David Victor Presents, my music production company, harmonyandhealing.org, and Boom Cycle, which is my day gig, digital marketing.
That's it. Just all that stuff going on.
All that stuff is going on.
I don't know how you manage all that. That's incredible. We didn't even get to talk about David Victor Presents, and I know you have a lot of great bands that you're working with.
Some who are coming to the Bank.
That's right. Looking forward to this awesome Queen band.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap it up. I have a couple of other quick questions for you.
Sure.
So we're going to do a little fast
Q&A.
Fast Q&A.
First word that comes to my mind.
Stuff.
Yeah.
What's the last piece of music you just listened to?
We're going to have to edit this because I need to think.
Or what are you listening to right now that you really like?
Okay. For some reason, going through my head constantly is Creed Higher. Can you take me higher? I don't know why. Every time, just the drums in that song.
Band. Yeah.
It just had a good, gutsy vibe.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any guilty pleasures for music?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's one of them. I just named one.
If I walked in, you'd turn the channel really quick and say, I was just checking this.
Well, it's funny with that band.
Weather.
I mean, this is a tangent, of course, like all my thoughts, but they were super legit. And then when they had a hit, they were like, nobody likes them anymore. It's like, well, I always loved just pop music. Like I mentioned KFRC, I love the Spinners and the OJs and, all this poppy music from the early 70s and stuff.
Yeah.
That's definitely my guilty pleasure that I liked, the Bee Gees and all that stuff. But it's
Oh, yeah.
great vocal music. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
One last question, because you mentioned Van Halen a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Okay, so both great at what they do. Sammy's like, if you just said, who would you rather sing like? I mean, Sammy sings, right? Sammy's amazing vocalist. There's a video I want everybody to go try to find. It's the Record Plant, and they're doing Montrose, Sammy's first sort of real band, is doing just a recording like on the King Biscuit Flower Hour or something, one of these old timey shows. And Sammy weighs like 105 pounds. And he's got these headphones on. They're like the size of watermelons. And he's singing his ass off. And it just sounds incredible. You got to hear that. And David Lee Roth, fantastic showman. Just nobody's better at just putting on a show. And just that. I loved how Van Halen combined this incredible musicianship with putting on a show, because there was a lot of great musicians that most people never heard of. I went and saw Alan Holdsworth at the Baked Potato in Studio City a few years back. And incredible player, guitar god, didn't care about putting on a show, thought every show he did stunk. And it was like, no, you're incredible. What are you doing? But, there's some musicians that just want to hide and play music. And I love combining the music with the show, right?
Yeah.
That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, David Victor. You've got a lot of great things going on. Super nice guy and doing a lot for the community.
Thank you.
I'm so happy to know you and to have you be a
thrilled.
part of what we do also at the Bankhead Theater.
Thrilled to know you, Chris. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And as you can see, I just ramble on all day about music.
We're going to keep talking for another hour after
Yeah.
this. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.